Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana. Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana. Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachara. Yamuna Tira Vanachara. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana. Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada. Nittai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaur Hari Bol, Nittai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaur Hari Bol. युगधर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तेर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So reading from Canto 4, Chapter 29, talks between Narada and King Prachinavari. Text 70. Naham mameti bhavoyam purushe vyavadhiyate यावद् बुद्धि मनोक्षार्ता गुणाव्यूहो हि अनादिमान् नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं पुरुषे व्यवधीयति यावद् बुद्धि मनोक्षार्ता गुणव्यूहो हि अनादिमान् नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं पुरुषे व्यवधीयते यावद्बुद्धिमनोक्षार्थ गुणव्यूहो हि अनादिमान्
नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं
नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं
पुरुषे व्यवधीयते
यावद्बुद्धिमनोक्षार्थ
गुणव्यूहो ह्यनादिमान्
नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं
पुरुषे व्यवधीयते
यावद्बुद्धिमनोक्षार्थ
गुणव्यूहो ह्यनादिमान्
नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं
पुरुषे व्यवधीयते
यावद्बुद्धिमनोक्षार्थ
गुणव्यूहो ह्यनादिमान्
नाहं ममेति भावोऽयं
पुरुषे व्यवधीयते
यावद्बुद्धिमनोक्षार्थ
गुणव्यूहो हि अनादिमान्
Word to word meaning na, not, aham, I, mama, mine, iti, thus, bhavaha, consciousness, ayam, this, purushe, in the living entity, vyavadhiyate, is separated, yavat, so long, buddhi, intelligence, manaha, mind, aksha, senses, artha, sense objects, guna, of the material qualities, vyuhaha, a manifestation, he, certainly, anadi, man, the subtle body, existing since time immemorial. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. As long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses and sense objects, and the reactions of the material qualities, the consciousness of false identification and its relative objective, the gross body, exists as well. Purport. The desire in the subtle body of mind, intelligence and ego cannot be fulfilled without a gross body composed of the material elements earth, water, air, fire and ether. When the gross material body is not manifest, the living entity cannot factually act in the modes of material nature. In this verse, it is clearly explained that the subtle activities of the mind and intelligence continues due to the suffering and enjoyment of the living entity's subtle body. The consciousness of material identification, such as I and mine, still continues because such consciousness has been extant for time immemorial. However, when one transfers to the spiritual world by virtue of the understanding Krishna consciousness, the actions and reactions of the both gross and subtle bodies no longer bother the spirit soul. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashulakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamavyam Dadati Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitanscha Namavam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratisve Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rushabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate girim yatkrupatamaham mande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Hare Krishna. So we were discussing about the talks between Narad and King Prachinavari, and Narad Muni was explaining about how one experiences about dream and subtle consciousness and gross consciousness and all. So today verse talks about how the subtle consciousness without gross material body, it cannot be satisfied. So as it is said here, Anadiman is the subtle body which is existing since from time immemorial, had experienced lot of activities stored in the mind. So here it is said subtle body which is like a mind, intelligence and ego. So these are the subtle, and this has a lot of acquired a lot of information from time immemorial. We don't know when this has been collecting the data, and since this subtle consciousness has these kind of desires, so to fulfill those desires it needs a gross body. Without gross body, so this subtle desires which we have, it doesn't fulfill. So if you see, here it says in the purport, the desires in the subtle body of the mind, intelligence, ego cannot be fulfilled without the gross body, which is made up of material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. So as long as there exists a subtle material body, so there is a material gross body, because this subtle body keeps desiring for enjoyment, and to fulfill those enjoyment material desires, they need a gross body. In that way, we have 8,400,000 species, different kinds of bodies, where in different form of a body we enjoy in different ways. So this human form also have a different kind of desires to fulfill. So we have certain kind of desires. So to fulfill those desires, we got this material body which is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. And this mind, which is the storehouse of all the desires, and it is dictating now our senses to fulfill its desire. Now mind is keep on desiring, I like this, I want this, I want to enjoy this. So why we are here? Because of this mind. We are away from the Krishna, and we wanted to enjoy away from Krishna. We don't want to give pleasure to Krishna, then we wanted to enjoy like Krishna. So that lord it over material energy, we have that desire. So we got this body. So when we have this kind of desire of enjoying my own self, then we are sent to this material world to enjoy in different species, to fulfill our desires. So if you see, like this is the main problem where we are here suffering a lot, but still due to ignorance, now we feel like I'm happy here. But like before coming to Krishna consciousness, we are like, especially myself, wandering here and there, searching for some kind of material happiness, thinking that is the ultimate happiness if I enjoy, if I get, thinking that I should get a nice job, I should have a good pay, and I can have some nice car or bike, I can have nice mobile phone, Apple. Yeah, those kind of things are things like we will be thinking these gives me highest happiness, and we will be like working for that. But when we come into Krishna consciousness, we see like these all the happinesses, it's all like temporary. It's all, especially it is not at all happiness at all. No, it's like it doesn't give any happiness, because we can see an example like if I have a phone, mobile phone, which is a newly released in the market, which is having a very nice features, which is very high price. So I buy it, but after a few months it becomes old. The new brand comes in the market, then I feel like I feel like if I get this best product technology, then I feel like it's like I will be very happy. But after 6 months, when another product comes into the market, then that creates me very bad sorrow, distress, thinking that my phone become old. 6 months old phone. He didn't bother like I spent like almost 70,000 to buy this phone. Hard earned money just went off. But it doesn't stop. But when we come into Krishna consciousness, when we understand that like even in Bhagavad Gita, first thing what Krishna says to Arjuna is like, you are not this body. So when we come out of this bodily consciousness, then we understand what is actual thing. Always like we feel like for temporary happiness we'll be running here and there, thinking like this will give me the highest happiness, and after when we get it, still like we'll be like not happy, still in distress. And Harikshit Prabhu used to give this example of a child. He is crying for the chips to eat, a packet. So he is so much crying. Then parents thought, okay, he is so much crying, let me give it, make him happy. So he'll be happy by having this chip packet. So he's crying. So when they gave it, still that boy is crying, not eating the chips at all. Then again, what happened? We already gave you chips, but you have demand. Then he felt like if I eat, that will get over. Then I will still like I will lose my chips. So still he is thinking that I should not eat so that it will get finished. So he's still crying. If I eat, then it will get over. So that is like still he is not happy. So like this, this material happiness, like which is temporary, we will be like running here and there, but there is no end for it. But when we come into Krishna consciousness, we understand like this is body. We are not this body, and this happiness which I am searching for before was temporary happiness, just which gives happiness to my body, not to the soul. And especially we should understand like I am a part and parcel of Krishna, so I am a servant of the Krishna, so I should serve Krishna. That is our real happiness. When I serve Krishna, then that gives a lot of happiness to our soul. Maybe physically our body is going through some lot of physical activities, even that is Krishna consciousness, but sometimes we get some body pains because of that activities, but still we will like feel very happy after doing that service. Some devotees they dance in the kirtan so much like next day their legs are really very painful, but still they will be happy because like they are not dancing for their own self, they are dancing for Krishna. So similarly, like if I have a desire to eat, so rather to eat something which is there, which is not offered to Krishna, so better have Krishna Prasadam. So in that way, I can fulfill my desires. So like if someone is very good in developer as a software developer, so instead of working for someone else, so better work for Krishna. Do something, creativity, like give some, what we call that, application, something we can make it. So Gita course application, online Gita course application, online courses. So many there they can do it. If someone is good at engineering, constructions and all, so they can build, instead of having a desire to build a nice big apartment, yeah, why can't they build a nice temple to ISKCON Whitefield, so which we want. so like that they can put their intelligence, they can use those things or dovetail those material desires into spiritual desires. So that comes like where we are spiritually very happy. Or else like we will be not at all happy. We'll be hankering here and there. See, the soul nature is thinking, willing and feeling. This is soul. Mind's nature. So anyhow, like we'll be always all the time thinking, like desiring something. So better to desire, in Krishna conscious way. So than like desiring something else where we will be like completely entangled. So if you see, like here it is said, the senses which are there, so senses and sense objects. So senses are being created to perceive sense objects. So it is not like senses and sense objects both are being created so that they can perceive it. So senses are enough to perceive sense objects. So it is here said, as long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses and sense objects, and the reactions of the material qualities, the consciousness of false identification and its relative objects in the gross body exists as well. So when these things are there, like if you see, our senses may not able to perceive each and everything. No, our senses generally can't see beyond particular spectrum. No, you can't hear some kind of sounds. And if you see some animals, they can see it. Like like some animals they can see in the night, which we can't see in the night. So like some cats, they can see the ghosts which are subtle, which we can't see. So we can see like why people say when we are going somewhere out, so when a cat crosses, then the general people say it's a not a good, because it's not because of the cat, but it's because the action what cat is doing, because it's following some this subtle ghost which we can't see it. So people say like when the cat crosses, so we are not supposed to go anywhere else. It's not good for us. So like that, like our senses generally can't perceive beyond some extent. Like there are some defects, as we know, like 4 defects. But if you see the desire which we have, so if we dovetail those desires, material desires into spiritual desires by practicing Krishna consciousness. So like in the purport also Prabhupada says here, when one transfers to the spiritual world by virtue of understanding Krishna consciousness, the action and reactions of the both gross and subtle body no longer bother the spirit soul. So if you see, this spirit soul doesn't need this gross body to execute Krishna consciousness. But now we have got this both gross and subtle bodies, and because of having so many material desires, so we got this. But now how to use it in a Krishna conscious way? How can we? That's what like Prabhupada is saying, like by practicing, by understanding Krishna consciousness, we can we can dovetail our thoughts, material thoughts, into spiritual thoughts. And when we do that, there it doesn't need of both gross and subtle body. So when we dovetail, generally we can see like some elevated personalities, devotees, they are not at all bothered about their body. In one case, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going on the banks of the ocean, he was walking. It was a night, autumn, where there was a full moon. Then he saw that full moon and he just remembered the rasa dance pastime, and he got so ecstatic, he forgot it. He forgot about his material consciousness. He lost his, and he was in transcendental platform, and he just remembered the Yamuna and he entered into the ocean. And the associates who are there, following the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like in that ecstatic mood, he was walking, running, and he entered into the ocean. And the associate, they lost Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They thought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be in Gambhira, in Jagannath temple or Tota Gopinath temple somewhere. They were searching here and there. They didn't found him. But this one fisherman in the night, he was catching the fishes. So he put a net. So he caught Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But in the night, he was not able to understand who is that. So he thought that it is a big fish. So he brought to the shore. But when he touched Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was in ecstatic, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in that spiritual platform, and he was completely transformed, what we call having those kind of ecstatic feelings. And when he touched the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he also got that vibration, and he also chanting, shivering, hair stand at the end, and he was crying like anything. And the associate, they were searching for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here and there. Then finally they were crossing this fisherman. So they found he is behaving something weird. Then they asked what happened to you? Then he said I was catching the fish. Then the ghost got stuck in my fisher net. Then I was being possessed by the ghost, he was saying. Then one of the associates, he said I know how to draw away this ghost. Then he slapped. So then he comes to that external consciousness. Then they asked where is that the thing which you have found? Then he showed it's still in the net, I don't want to see it. Then they went. So because of that ecstatic feelings, and he was in that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in that spiritual platform, his joints were extended, and his hands and legs were extended. He was not in that normal shape, normal bodily shape. So devotees saw that, then they feel this was not the usual thing which generally happens to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then they started doing kirtan. So then slowly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to his external consciousness. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, why you brought me to external consciousness? I was there in Ras Leela, and gopis said me to bring flowers to make garland. I was doing that. Why you disturb me? But later Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understand it's not the right place and to express these kind of things. Then in this pastime we can see he was completely out of bodily consciousness. So like that we were discussing about this to execute this Krishna consciousness. We don't want any material body, but since we got this material body, so we can dovetail those material consciousness which we have into spiritual consciousness. As we discussed, if someone is hunger, they can eat Krishna Prasad only. In that way they can dovetail their desire, they can fulfill their desire in a Krishna conscious way. So similarly, since we have this material body, we can use our intelligence to control our mind. So we see like above the mind is the intelligence, senses, mind, intelligence. So intelligence have a higher hand than the mind. But since in time immemorial we are under the control of the mind, we are like used to hear or obey the orders of the mind, not able to discriminate or put our intelligence and say stop to stop the mind activities or desires. But if you practice and use our intelligence and as we say like thinking, feeling, willing. So if you are thinking in a right way, not in material consciousness, like material consciousness like the consciousness where we feel like we want to enjoy ourselves, that is material consciousness. And spiritual consciousness like where I don't want to like enjoy, but I want to give enjoyment to devotees or to the Krishna. So that is spiritual consciousness. So this kind of thinking so is there, and if we desire in this way, and sometimes we can say no to our mind whenever it desires. Sometimes we can say no than simply obeying or simply accepting what it desires and executing it. So because we are being used to that, it's little difficult to say no. But when we practice it, saying no and only accepting the desires which are in line with spiritual consciousness, then we can easily dovetail our mind and desires into spiritual like Krishna consciousness. There comes like where we can happily execute our Krishna consciousness without having a trouble of mind, like Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, right? So which is a sloka 6.6. This is 6.5 and 6.6. 6.6. For him who has conquered the mind is the best friend. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So in here also it says like how can we conquer the mind? So by using our intelligence and only desiring about spiritual consciousness. Like we can't nullify or we can't be there without desires. Somewhere the desires comes pop-ups. So when we say no to the material desires and only desire for only spiritual desires, then easily we can control our mind. And that's what like we are also doing chanting every day. So that will also help us to control our mind. So and when we are chanting, chanting with focus and constantly praying to the Lord, to remember or to able to hear the voice, the mantra, and in that way like we can control our mind. So it's a best it's a easy process also what Prabhupada has given to us. And so when we practice like this, transferring our material thoughts into spiritual thoughts, so like understanding Krishna consciousness according to the Krishna consciousness, then it's easy to come out of this botherings what mind is creating to us. So we can practice in this way to come out of this. So I just pause here. So any corrections?
So this is the absorption and chanting and the practice of Krishna consciousness. It helps us naturally to get out of this botheration of lot of botheration. It helps to control the mind. That's a nice point. I had another class, so I couldn't able to come in before. So I don't know like what was discussed. But one small thing that when we talk about this out of body, this one and all, so the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may not appropriately fit, because in terms of the Lord, there is no difference between body and soul. So like it's the same. So that may not perfectly fit there. So, but otherwise, the pastime was so nice. Like the Lord is. To just you have to see the context there, but generally we don't take that example in there. Yeah. So, next.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So after 6 months hearing you, it was very nice. So you made a point that in Krishna consciousness we will be happy. So I was just thinking, if someone is not happy, then we have to understand that we are not yet there in Krishna consciousness. You also gave a nice definition of material consciousness and spiritual consciousness. So material consciousness is working for one's own sense gratification, and spiritual consciousness is working for the pleasure of devotees and Krishna. So these two are something which I would like to meditate on for today. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So only when we are out of the body consciousness, we can actually see the material manifestation around us as it is. As long as we are in the bodily consciousness, we cannot judge things properly. So Krishna consciousness is the way we can come out of that body consciousness. And one of the easiest ways to do that is, one of the obstacles or one of the catalyst which keeps us in that body consciousness is the material desires in the material mind, which moment after moment keeps producing material desires based on the stockpile of various lifetimes. So if we can just practice to dovetail our desires in Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a spiritual master, then we can easily conquer the mind and come out of the body consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So that example was very nice. That child, he's crying to get that thing, and after getting also he's still lamenting. So this thing also same thing in the material world. We try for something, there is always a fear. What if I lose? So that is called material consciousness, and it is all because of material desires. So whatever material desires we have to engage that in the service of the Lord. Then desire also will be finished, and we will be purified and be happy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Thank you so much for your talk. Once again, you emphasize on all the points that Prabhupada always emphasizes on in every lecture of his, the fact that the subtle body has so many desires, and that to perform those sense gratificatory activities, it takes up this gross body, and this tendency is due to it's developed because we are away from Krishna, and we are not aware that this is a very miserable state of existence. We keep digging deeper and deeper, trying to extract that happiness, but all we find is misery at the end. So the true happiness, everlasting happiness, can be attained only by serving Krishna. Only by serving Krishna we get that happiness. There cannot be a state, on this point you mentioned, that there cannot be a state where we do not have any desires. Desires have to be there. How much ever we try to control them, the desires will pop up. So we just have to make sure that these desires of ours are spiritual desires, desire to serve the Lord and His devotees. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु। जैसे होता है कि माइंड, जैसे ग्रॉस बॉडी चाहिए माइंड को एंजॉय करने के लिए, पर अगर हम इंटेलिजेंस यूज़ करते हैं, मतलब कहता है कि मत कर, तो माइंड फिर कहता है कि ये बॉडी मिली है एंजॉयमेंट के लिए, करना एंजॉयमेंट, क्यों छोड़ रहा है, कर। या फिर बिलीव नहीं होने देता कि देयर इज़ इंटेलिजेंस। तो मतलब फिर माइंड को कैसे कंकर करें, तोड़े कैसे उसको? तो उतना पावर फिर इंटेलिजेंस को भी रोक देता है ना वो। अगर हम बुक पढ़ रहे हैं तो उस पर बिलीव करने का, या नहीं मत कर बिलीव, ये सही नहीं है, तू पागल है। तो उस टाइम हाँ, वो बिल्कुल माइंड कहता है कहाँ क्यों कर रहा है, मतलब क्वेश्चन इतने सारे खड़े करता है, इंटेलिजेंस फिर छोटा पड़ जाता है कि यार क्या जवाब दूँ इसको मैं। फिर माइंड जीत जाता है। तो वही ब्रो, मतलब हो नहीं पाता, कितना हम कोशिश करें ना, कितना भी कोशिश कर रहा हूँ हो नहीं पाता है वो कहीं ना कहीं माइंड चढ़ जाता है कि इतना तो मेरे 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 थ्रू इतना चल रहा है तो थोड़ा सा और चल ले। ऐसा करके कहता है। तो इंटेलिजेंस पावरफुल हो नहीं पा रहा है मेरा, तो वो कैसे करें और थोड़ा पावर कैसे बढ़ाएं उसका। तो कभी कभी सुनता है इंटेलिजेंस का।
As we have discussed, like above the mind there is intelligence, but since we are listening to mind, ignoring the intelligence, we are thinking we are not able to control our mind through intelligence. But the thing we should understand, like the scriptures talks about this, means like there is a way to do it, so we should accept it. Our mind is so adamant, like it's not able to listen what is the scripture, what is right or wrong, because the tendency to enjoy is being very deep, like it is not allowing us to hear it. But when we are under some authorities, when we are under some spiritual master and accepts what Krishna is saying and simply follow it, so we'll overcome it. It's not that easy, like when we are sent to school, it's not that easy, like we just sat in one class and understood all the subject. For that, 1 year is being given to us to practice. Even though we practice, we may not become a first ranker in the top of the school or class. But there, like comes where we are trying to at least understand the subject and attempt it. So now here we are trying to understand what Krishna is saying, and by the guidance, right guidance from the seniors and a spiritual master, and obeying their instructions, now we can able to control it. It may takes someone, for some person it may takes some time, but for someone it may take long time. It's not like we start comparing, he got easily able to control and he got no very fixed up devotee in Krishna consciousness, but still I am struggling here with my chanting, basic things I am not able to do. But have a hope that by following the scriptures, by following the instructions, definitely we'll come out of it. We should have that faith. That's what I said in the class, like sometimes you should say no to the mind. When you simply say yes all the time and accepting it, then it's like now how you are facing, like it's very difficult to overcome. But sometimes it's good to say no. If someone who is addicted for the drugs and he's been caught and he's put in the prison, still I heard they give little drugs to him to control his mind. Or else, instead of giving, like before being caught, he was having a lot of drug, he was using so much drugs. But at one stop, if you try him to control, it's difficult. He'll become crazy. So, but to control him, to get him back to the normal stage, they had to reduce the dosage. Little they used to go. At one point, like when he's been satisfied with, okay, no, at least I'm getting little. Then later on, tomorrow he will say, at least I'm getting little much. Now next time, he's been controlling slowly. He's getting that kind of training. So at one point of time, he will be able to give up those completely. Then he will be out of the prison. Till then, he will be there in the prison and he will be given that kind of treatment. So we are also here, like we are being hearing all the time the mind what he is saying. So, but when we heard like we can control it through our intelligence, and how it has to be done, everything has been given. When we follow that, obviously like it is new to the mind, and someone is like overcoming the mind, so trying to subdue it, suppress it. So it will be difficult. It won't accept it. But when we accept, when we slowly do it, when we get inspiration by seeing other devotees how nicely they are doing, seeing the hope like they have been completely changed by doing this process, I will also be able to change. Then having that hope, like that's a hope giving, and when we do it, when we practice sincerely, not cheating ourselves, because we wanted to come out of it and we ourselves get cheated, then like no one can save. But we should be very loyal, and we should be very sincere to try to come out of it, then it will happen. Someone can add meaning.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I like this point that because we were under the mind and we were listening the mind from so many lifetimes. So that's why we are still controlled by the mind. That's why we are now facing very difficulty to come out of the mind, from the mind's control. That's why it's becoming very difficult to follow the rules and regulations and according to the shastras, and because we were so adamant and fulfilling the whatever the mind is saying and going astray in the way of seeking pleasure in different ways. So you told the point that we should say no. At some point of time we should say no and accept the principles, and slowly we should improve by saying no to the mind and yes to the scriptures. That point I liked and would like to implement, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for such a wonderful session. So the points which I liked was first is that I first initially before coming to Krishna consciousness, I used to think that controlling the mind means like a blank kind of like there will be nothing in the mind, no thoughts, and I mean I'll be having no thoughts at all. That is actually controlling the mind. But actually, it's very nicely mentioned that controlling the mind doesn't mean that we have to negate the thoughts or basically make it make it a vacuum. But it's actually replacing the material desires, the material thoughts with the spiritual thoughts or spiritual desires. Because desire, we can't get rid of the desires, but we just have to replace it. And when it gets replaced with the spiritual desires and spiritual thoughts, that is actually the control of the mind, control over the mind. So this is a very nice point. And another point is like this: we can't be happy in the spiritual material consciousness, because in the material consciousness we'll be always be working for like my own bodily satisfaction or mental satisfaction. But in the spiritual consciousness, we'll be desiring to, or we'll be working towards satisfying the devotees and satisfying the Lord, the senses of the Lord. So I was just like logically thinking like how, like why it happens that okay we can be happy only at the spiritual platform is that because I as a soul is eternal. I am eternal and the Lord is also eternal. So if I try to satisfy the Lord, there will be no limit. I mean always there will be a scope to satisfy more and more and more, and there will be no limit. So it's eternal and I'll be eternally happy. But if we are at the material consciousness on the material plane, so because the body is limited or temporary, so one act, if I engage in one act of satisfying the body, it will end and the body will also die after some time. So it is limited and temporary. So that's why I can't get happy. It's not eternal. So that's why like this point I really liked. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So this point you mentioned regarding that we have to dovetail our activities in the service of the Lord. So that is a very nice point, as you gave the example of engineers, that if or someone developer is developing something, so he should develop for Krishna. And that is very true also, like if we do something like in companies or all, the reward we get will be only temporary. If we develop something, managers will praise us, we might get appraisal, and next year if the company goes in loss, they will also throw us out. So but if we do something for Krishna, it will be an eternal reward.
And this was also a very nice point. If someone is a builder, he should build a temple for ISKCON Whitefield. So that was Hare Krishna. He should.
Hare Krishna. Dovetail material desire into spiritual desire. It's a nice point. And this, it is not that easy. If I think today I can change, it's not that easy. Only by the mercy of Guru and Krishna it can happen actually. Hare Krishna.
हमने जो एग्जाम्पल दिया कि अगर कुछ डिजायर है तो लाने के बाद मान लीजिए एग्जाम्पल दिया कि मोबाइल अगर मैं लेके आ रहा हूँ तो 15 दिन का बाद भी वो थोड़ा पुराना हो जाता है, थोड़ा अच्छे से केयर करते हैं, बाद में हाँ इधर फेंक देते हैं फिर पुराना हो गया वो, ठीक है वो चला गया, फिर दूसरा मार्केट में आया ये अच्छा है मैं क्यों इसको खरीदा वो अच्छा था। कि उसका मतलब क्या है कि हम मटेरियल जितना भी चीज़ खरीद रहे हैं तो टेम्पररी है, कुछ टाइम के लिए हैप्पी देता है, बाद में नहीं देता है। अगर हम स्पिरिचुअलिटी कुछ सर्व भी कर रहे हैं तो वो हमेशा याद रहता है और वो हैप्पी रहता है, रियल हैप्पीनेस है वो।
Question like you told like Chaitanya Prabhu was freely giving mercy and everything, like even fisherman, washerman, many places, like they doing that job means it is like equal to Shudras and they will be very in gross platform. So we are struggling following regulative principles, rules and regulations, and coming to Sattva Guna and again coming more to Shuddha Sattva Guna. Then also we are not able to access the spiritual potencies or spiritual consciousness or that kind of thing. So even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was felt in ocean and caught by fishermen. He didn't give mercy. He was in the slept mode or something. But the fisherman, as soon as he touched, he might be on the gross platform only, but as soon as he touched, how could he access that? Because now Prabhuji, if we take example of electric shock, whoever touches, they will get shock. But whoever is insulated and wearing chappals or something, then he will not get shock. So even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared to a current, because we are insulated by the modes, ignorance and everything, actually one cannot access the shock or something. But how whoever touches is, I couldn't grasp what is the thing.
Time we'll discuss. In many aspects matters here. Even when Krishna was in Mathura, where he went to kill Kamsa, there on the way when he was going, he met so many people. And he met one tailor. He asked the clothes. He didn't give, he killed. But he said that tailor said these are clothes meant only for the king, Kamsa. But they didn't understand who is Krishna is. Here the fisherman, when he was in weeping, crying, chanting and tears coming from his eyes when he touched the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the devotees, when they saw this state, they understood he's been somewhere he is in touch with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So only they approached him. He is behaving abnormal. So means abnormal means out of material things. So but when they asked what you have, when the fisherman says I caught a ghost, and then those associates ask, where is the ghost, show me. And they say he is not a ghost, you have caught Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Fisherman says, no, I know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I know who is he, I know his form, but this form is something weird, it looks like ghost, because out of ecstasy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body was joints are being extended and he is not in his shape. Means here we can see that fisherman knows about the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. and he believes on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is not resisting. Now, as you say, when we touch, when we are wearing chappal and all, means like we consciously not wanted to take that current. We are opposing it. So only we are putting so many equipments like chappal, hold a stick and other things away from the water, out stand on the chair, not to touch the ground. We are prepared not to take that current. But here, when you are prepared to accept that mercy, then definitely you will experience it. So it says like once you chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra with pure heart, you will feel all these ecstasies. But since we are not able to do, because we have a lot of contamination, we have to get purified still more. So like we are wearing those chappals and all, like where we are not allowing the current to pass. So when we get purified from the heart, like definitely when we chant, whenever you chant, whenever you hear, whenever you see, picture of the Krishna or some black cloud also, if you see, you'll get faint by remembering Krishna. That is pure consciousness. We are not come into that Suddha Sattva level yet, because we have still contamination. It's not that easy to come to the Suddha Sattva. It's very difficult to come to the Sattva level, mode of goodness. About to talk about transcendental goodness. But when we wash out all this contamination from the heart, it will happen when we chant sincerely, when we it happened by the mercy of the Guru and Krishna. So when you follow that, definitely it will, that hope is there, like one day I can experience it. So we'll pause here. So Granthiraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnavand ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.